3, 2, 1. Welcome back to the Deep Six Wrestling Podcast. It's Wednesday. You know what that means. It's Wednesday, May 19th, so it's another episode of our Dynamite reviews, the AEW Dynamite review show here at the Deep Six Wrestling Podcast. It's just me tonight. I'm still the Deep Six Predictions champion, but we'll see how that fares next weekend when we hit Double or Nothing. I'm Pat, so welcome to the show. My normal co-host Joey is not here tonight. He should be back. I actually don't know what we're going to do next week. We'll talk about that in a couple minutes, but I'm assuming he'll be back next week. If not, that's fine too, but we'll see. We'll talk about what's going on next week. But if you're new here, this is we cover AEW every week. We cover Impact every week, and this past Monday we started our first ever Raw review series. Me, Joey, and Ryan. We watched Raw, we reviewed it, it was a hell of a time. So if you go back to the previous episode in the podcast, you can check that out. It's also up on our YouTube channel. You can stream the whole thing for free. As unenjoyable as Raw was, I think our review show it was a very fun time. It was one of the most fun times I think I've had on the podcast in quite some time. It was just an enjoyable recording session. It was also the first time we've recorded the podcast in person with each other. We're all starting to be reach our fully vaccinated status, so it's being more available to us to be comfortably around each other and to do the podcast and everything. So me and Ryan live together, but Joey was with us and we did the podcast face to face rather than just recording online remotely. So that was an interesting experience since we started this podcast during COVID last year. Back in March, I want to say, March of 2020. And since we started, it was just all remote. So it was an interesting experience doing it in person. And hopefully we get to do more of those soon. As a reminder, we're streaming on pretty much every streaming service now. We're on Apple, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, Google Play, Owltail, Breaker, Overcast. We're on a bunch of stuff, so just look us up if you're on a platform that you're not really into. You can find us somewhere else. We're also putting the podcast on YouTube now pretty regularly, so sometimes the episode's not up, sometimes it is, but for the most part the episodes are getting uploaded. So you can check our YouTube channel out to watch or listen to the podcast. So be sure to subscribe over there, and if you do subscribe on our YouTube channel, be sure to leave comments in the episodes. Tell us what you liked about our show, about the actual wrestling show, and really just anything. Interactions greatly appreciated. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, please consider leaving a review. It helps us out exponentially. So yes. Alright, that's all of that. So what I was talking about with next week's Dynamite is not on Wednesday. It is next Friday at 10 p.m., so it's 10 to 12. I don't know if we're going to have a show for that. We will have a prediction/preview show for Double or Nothing sometime next week since we have the whole card. I honestly think we might do that on Wednesday night to have that out before the pay-per-view, and it can serve as our Wednesday night show. And then Ryan and Angela's Impact Power Hour will be on Thursday, and maybe we'll have a brief Dynamite review on Friday, but we might just not have a Dynamite review next Friday just because of the timing of it. But regardless, we will have a prediction show for Double or Nothing coming out next week, as well as the regular Impact reviews. And coming up sometime in the next few weeks, we're going to be doing a second edition of a special podcast we did last year, where it's a fantasy draft. Ryan came up with the idea to do it again with a reworked system. Basically, each of us is creating our own wrestling company, and we get certain criteria that we have to meet with like superstars that we need, wrestlers. And you can choose from any company, and there's just certain things you have to meet, like certain age areas for different wrestlers. You can have like one or two veterans. You can have a certain number of tag teams. You can break up tag teams. You need like your top guys, your mid-card guys, stuff like that. And we're going to be doing that, and we're going to compare and contrast each other's rosters. So that should be fun. It's going to be me, Ryan, Joey. Rob will be making his return to the podcast, and we might have Angelo joining us, and who knows, maybe even Sam. So it might be a full show. No idea when that's actually going to happen. Probably sometime in June, I would assume. It's just a matter of when we can all get free. But that will be a fun time. The first one we did last year was also really fun. So be sure to subscribe to the podcast if you're not already subscribed. Subscribe to us on YouTube. You can check out all of our content there. I keep meaning to upload Joey's second Impact punishment that he has to do. It's him watching Jenna Maraska versus Charmel for the first time and commentating and giving his live reaction to it. I haven't gotten around to it. So to those waiting for that, I apologize, but it will be up soon. And I think that's all of that. There is a few pieces of news to get into, so I guess we can talk about that before I start talking about Dynamite. So the first piece that we should probably talk about is we'll start off with the non AEW news, just because this is the AEW podcast, so saving that for last makes more sense. We'll talk about the news coming out of NXT today, where we got this all started with I think genuinely good news, where we got the reveal that Drake Wirtz, I don't know how you say his last name, nor do I really fucking care. But he was officially released by WWE, and I think pretty much everybody rejoiced. And then we got the announcement that there were more releases coming, and so on top of him, we also got Kavita Devi or Devi. She was in the Mae Young Classic and referred to as the Hard KD. I also think she was part of the WWE. I don't know if it was like a special event or like a special pay-per-view they did for India earlier this year. I have a feeling she was on it. I vaguely remember seeing that she was teaming with somebody. Maybe Charlotte. I could be wrong, but regardless, she was in the Mae Young Classic. That's where I know her from. I didn't watch that other show. Vanessa Bourne. She was in NXT for quite some time, and reportedly was called up last year to the main roster, yet never debuted, and she never reappeared in NXT. Jessamine Duke of the MMA Four Horsewomen, most notably tagged with Marina Shafir, and played the backup for Shayna Baszler during her time as NXT Women's Champion. She's transitioned into being like a content creator for YouTube with gaming videos now and doing stuff with Up Up Down Down. So I wouldn't be surprised if she still technically is tied with WWE and does stuff with Up Up Down Down, but she's no longer wrestling for NXT. Ezra Judge and referee Jake Clemens. I do not know who either of those people are. And then Skylar Story, who was known as Brandy Lauren and Ava Story prior to her time in NXT, who was signed, I think, last October or November. And I think she was in a segment with Damian Priest where he was in a hot tub. And then she might have been in a battle royal for NXT, and I think that was her only 2 televised appearances in terms of NXT. So I think that kind of just specifically highlights the whole argument of, WWE's strategy of hiring everybody doesn't really make sense, because if you don't have plans for these people, then what's really the point? I'm sure she'll find footing elsewhere, either in Impact or AEW. She was a name on the indie scene with Evolve and stuff before getting signed to NXT, so I'm sure she'll get picked up somewhere. But so another batch of releases from NXT. So there you go. And then the AEW news is that we got the announcement that beginning in 2022, Dynamite will be moving to TBS. This obviously is playing a factor, most likely because of the NHL moving to TNT. But yeah, Dynamite's going to TBS. This feels like a pretty big deal. And this starts next year. I believe it's January of next year. I could be wrong. And we're also getting the debut on August 13th of this year, AEW Rampage, which is the long talked about third hour of Dynamite, but not really third hour of Dynamite. That's going to air on Fridays. I don't know if they've announced a time yet, but on Fridays moving forward after August 13th, we will have a new AEW show, AEW Rampage, on TNT. And sometime next year, it'll also move to TBS. So AEW's new home will be on TBS, and then obviously YouTube for Dark and Dark Elevation. We also got the announcement that there's going to be 4 TNT specials in addition to the normal 4 pay-per-views that AEW runs. So people have kind of pointed out that this sounds like basically what like Fyter Fest, Bash at the Beach, Winter is Coming, and Fight for the Fallen have served as. So seems like those are going to continue to be a thing, but they'll now be just branded as their own thing on TNT. Um, and yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. This is definitely good news, I think, for AEW. We now know that third show is actually happening. Or sorry, the third hour is actually happening. Dynamite is moving to TBS. And Warner is obviously asking for more AEW since they're doing the 4 TNT specials. So all around, I would say that this is pretty good news for AEW. So if you're an AEW fan, you should love to see it. Obviously, it's moving away from TNT, and who knows, the TNT title might change to the TBS title or like the Turner title or something. But yeah, good news for AEW, 100%. So yeah, I think that's it for the news. I don't think there's anything else to really talk about in terms of that. Those are the two pieces that were like actually important stuff that came out today. Um, so yes, I guess we can begin this solo show. I hate these solo shows. Like as much as we always do, as much as I always do them. It's such a pain to not have Joey here because like I just like being able to talk to somebody for this, like being able to bounce ideas back and forth and like get responses. So much better than just talking to myself for this. So bear with me. You're gonna get a lot of ums and stuff. I'm gonna feel like Dave Meltzer here, but we'll get through it, I suppose. So let's hop on in. Let's talk about AEW Dynamite from May 19th. All right, to kick off this show, we had Christian versus Matt Sydal. This was obviously built up last week with the announcement of the Casino Battle Royal for Double or Nothing, with both guys entering and having their issues backstage. I want to say this match only lasted like 11 or 12 minutes. I thought this was a really hot opening to the show. I thought both guys worked really well. Matt Sydal, I thought their styles really clashed well, where Christian was kind of trying to slow the match down repeatedly, and Sydal just kept speeding it up. We got lots of shades of like a heel Christian here, which I've noted before on the podcast. I think is a really cool thing. I think Christian, with his current gimmick of outwork everything or outwork everyone, is just like built for like a veteran to come into a young company like this with younger guys and like claiming that he can outwork everybody. Um, it just feels like it's like tailor made for like a top heel who's a veteran, and I really hope Christian runs with that sooner rather than later, with like a full like heel turn. But I thought these guys like lit it up to start off this show. This was just like ferocious and really really good wrestling all around. Christian won with the kill switch, and yeah, I enjoyed the hell out of this. More Matt Sydal on Dynamite, please and thank you. And Christian continues to impress. You know, it'd be understandable if Christian wasn't like that great. You know, having not wrestled for so many years and being like almost 50, but the man can still go really well. So you love to see it. After the match, Ricky Starks came out and he says that he's his own man in regards to everything that you may have heard over the past couple weeks. He's front and center. He's not going to be on the sidelines anymore. As he's saying that, Hook, Cage, and Hobbs blindside Christian and Sydal from the back. They sprint in from the opposite side of the ring, and Hangman Page comes out to make the save to even the numbers. But Brian Cage puts him down, and so Team Taz stands tall here. I was assuming that this was going to be setting up a 6-man for next week with Sydal, Christian Cage, and Page versus Team Taz, and I thought this was going to be our debut match for Hook, but unfortunately for all you Hook lovers out there, we're going to be waiting some more. Regardless, I thought this was a really solid opening to the show. I enjoyed this quite a bit. Matt Sydal and Christian Cage had great chemistry here, and yeah, I'm all for this. Loved every second of it. After this, we got a promo from the Varsity Blondes and Julia Hart, who's now paired with them as their valet. Love the pairing. I think they all look really good together. Varsity Blondes got new gear to like kind of sell their whole thing. They got like Letterman jackets. Very good. Much better presentation than what we've seen before from them. Brian Pillman cut a really good promo here about how he wanted to stay away from wrestling until he met the Young Bucks. And then we also got to hear from Griff Garrison, who talked about his ties to the Young Bucks from back in 2018 when he worked their merch table. And they both said that the Young Bucks need a reality check after this new attitude's come from them, and they say that they're going to give it to them when they win the tag titles. Solid promo from both guys. Varsity Blondes are easily like my tap for breakout stars of the year. They felt like they were kind of just put together last year, and then they started really gelling, and now they've got like a new Titantron. They have a valet. They have matching gear. They've had matching gear for a bit, but they have like new matching gear. They have like they have a whole thing that like works. It just feels like it's all coming together for them. So by the end of the year, I feel like these guys are going to be like fully formed and just like going very well. So you love to see it. Varsity Blondes, and the Acclaimed are the two teams I would look out for in 2021. These guys, both teams, two very different teams, but very entertaining in their own right. And speaking of the acclaimed, sorry. After this, we had a promo from Moxley and Eddie Kingston backstage. This felt very improvised in like a entertaining way. Like there was like a couple cuts throughout their promo. It just felt like they were just riffing backstage without a like a script or anything. Talking about the acclaimed, Eddie Kingston was like, I think one of them's a rapper and the other one's a friend of a rapper. I'm not gonna lie, it's funny. Um, and the acclaimed cut a brief promo after that. But the big stuff was obviously the acclaimed's rap, where Max Caster compared Eddie Kingston to a carton of Newport cigarettes and claimed that Renee Young had been calling him for oral sessions. And as they come to get in the ring with Anthony Bowen shouting AEW, uh, Moxley attacks him, and we start with a brawl. This was very fun. I thought these guys had good chemistry. On top of the acclaimed having a very entertaining rap to open this, the match itself was pretty good. I feel like the acclaimed were like when they first showed up, they were like a team who was entertaining because of their gimmick, but in the ring they weren't anything too special. I feel like since then they've really stepped up their in-ring work to balance out their charisma, and they held their own with Moxley and Kingston. I thought this was a really solid tag match. Kingston and Moxley won, which for those keeping track, AEW didn't put out a updated rankings this week, but last week the tag team rankings were SCU at number one. Obviously, SCU lost their title match to the Bucks, which would put them, well, they're not even a team anymore. The number two team was Varsity Blondes, who would lose later tonight. And then the number three team would be, who was it? Scorpio Sky and Ethan Page. They're facing Sting and Darby Allin at the pay-per-view. Number four was the Acclaimed, who Moxley and Kingston beat here. And number five was FTR, who are obviously in Stadium Stampede 2. And as commentary noted, Kingston and Moxley are undefeated as a team. So it really, I know some people I've seen pointing out, like, oh, what about the rankings? If you literally look at it and like dissect it, not even dissect it, if you just look at it and use logic, Eddie Kingston and John Moxley make 100% for challenging for the tag titles at the pay-per-view. Spoiler alert. Eddie Kingston and John Moxley are officially challenging the Young Bucks for the AEW World Tag Team titles at Double or Nothing. Moving on, we had Chris Jericho backstage with Dean Malenko, and Marvez basically asked him if the Inner Circle is going to accept the Stadium Stampede thing. Jericho says you're going to have to wait a little bit longer until everybody else finds out. And yeah, it was nice to see Dean Malenko. So, yes. After this, Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky get interviewed by Tony Schiavone. Scorpio mentions how he used to look up to Sting, but something happened to him. Time. Sting's not the man he used to be, and Scorpio's no longer a child, but he's rather a grown-ass man, warning Sting to step aside before he puts him down. And then we get a very impassioned Ethan Page just screaming into the mic about his issues with Darby Allin and how he's going to take everything away from Darby and he will be the nail in his coffin. After this, the lights come out, Sting comes out, Darby blindsides them in the ring with his skateboard. We get Sting putting Scorpio Sky in the Scorpion Deathlock, which Scorpio taps out to before he lets him go, and the heels run off. I thought this was a really good segment that heated up this whole feud. Ethan Page was somebody who came into AEW and kind of just like did nothing for a little bit, but I really think that they're like him versus Darby Allin feels like it's going to be like a very, very good feud. Um, just the promos from him alone just sells this so well. And we did find out later in the night that this is not going to be a cinematic match. This will be a straight up tag match at the pay per view in ring. Sting's first match in almost 6 years. So Sting's looked pretty good physically from what we've seen of him. Obviously, he's been in short bursts, so not really sure how to compare it to a full match, but I'm looking forward to this. You know, Scorpio, Ethan, and Darby are all really good, and Sting's shown that he can still do stuff, so I'm interested to see how much he can do and to see how this all plays out. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I thought this was a really solid segment to build this up a bit more than what we've seen so far. So this gets a thumbs up from me, 100%. Moving on from this, we had a pre-taped, basically vignette segment, whatever you want to call it. It was the Pinnacle at a restaurant here. MJF talks about how funny Chris Jericho is with his schoolyard humor. He hopes that the inner circle laugh and laugh and laugh. Ha 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 ha. He does this very, very fake ha 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 throughout this promo. But he says that he will get the last laugh. Dax Hardwood then mentions how they have to waste their time beating up the inner circle rather than what they were meant to do as the Pinnacle, and that is claiming all of the world championships in AEW. And last year, Stadium Stampede was a dog and pony show, but this year they're in control, and it's going to be a serious affair. During this, the waiter comes over and starts filling up Dax's wine glass, which isn't even close to being empty, while Sean Spears' glass is completely empty. And Sean Spears interrupts and tells the waiter to come over. This isn't even like funny. This is like really. I actually really enjoyed this. But Sean Spears says, "I want my drink," and he just grabs the waiter, and he just slams his head into the table. Before the rest of the group just like looks on and like kind of like horror here. I thought this was a really good way to rehab Sean Spears as like this crazed like maniac, which kind of harkens back to him murdering Cody with the chair shot when he first came into AEW. And as the waiter like pulls himself off the floor after Spears throws him, Tully Blanchard just pulls out a wad of money and tosses it to him, saying this should cover it. And MJF closed the promo by saying, "When you're with the Pinnacle, you're always on top." We also got to see Wardlow chug an entire bottle of wine. I thought this was a really solid segment for the Pinnacle. We got to see some new characterization here. Wardlow kind of being Wardlow chugging the bottle of wine was meant to be funny. We got MJF talking like their crazed leader. We saw Sean Spears being an absolute madman here over a goddamn bottle of wine. Or sorry, glass of wine, not even a bottle. And Dax wanting to claim all of the championships in AEW. And Tully paying off a waiter because he didn't want assault charges, presumably, for Sean Spears. I thought this was really solid. I hope that Sean Spears has been very inconsistent with his presentation during AEW's run so far. I hope that this can be more grounded for him and something that lasts a bit longer. I think it has legs, so we'll see. But I thought this was a really good introduction to this new, more serious version of him. So I'm excited for what he can do in Stadium Stampede. After this, we got Hikaru Shida versus Rebel. And you kind of knew what you were getting here. Rebel didn't really do anything. She tried to cheat with Britt. Shida tapped her out with the stretched muffler. And that was that. After the match, Britt came in and beat up Shida. And we got a really good spot here with Britt hitting a curb stomp to Shida on the AEW Women's Championship. Great stuff. If you're not sold on Shida versus Britt Baker already, then I don't know what to tell you. This is going to be a great match, and it's one of the greatest women's feuds in AEW. I mean, it's probably the greatest women's feud in AEW short history. So you'll love to see it. We got to see Kenny Omega and Don Callis show up. This was supposedly last week after the Orange Cassidy Pac match, but Kenny and Don show up in the trainer's room. The best friends and Chris are there, and they usher them out. Chris basically stood up to Kenny. It was cool to see. And the whole point of the segment was them trying to get him to sign a document which would back him out of the Double or Nothing title match in return for a singles match against Kenny at a later date. Orange Cassidy just looks nonchalantly at them and tears the contract up. And then we get Kenny saying the damage he's going to do to Orange Cassidy with the One Winged Angel is going to be significantly worse than the powerbomb that Pac hit him with. He could injure him even further. He could end his career. Hell, I could maybe end your life. So Kenny Omega has officially threatened to murder Orange Cassidy. And with that, Don Callis slid him another copy of the contract and says, rest up and give it some thought. And next week we will hear what Orange Cassidy has to say about that. Solid segment here. I like that we got a bit of goofiness here, but then we also got Kenny being serious and literally threatening to kill a man. So really solid. I'm looking forward to the match at the pay-per-view. I think it's going to be great stuff. We get the Inner Circle. They come out without Santana once again. I guess he just wasn't here at the tapings. And this is a fine promo. Ortiz and Chris Jericho were definitely the parts that helped this. Jake Hager was not good in this. And Sammy Guevara, shockingly, I also really wasn't a fan of his delivery with what he had to say. Which is pretty untypical, I would say, or atypical. I don't really I normally like Sammy on the mic. I didn't think he did very good here. But basically they all accept the stipulation, and that was that. I don't really have much to say about this one. Compared to the other stuff we got, like before Blood and Guts and the bubbly bath last week, this was on the weaker end of things. But I'm looking forward to Stadium Stampede 2. I think it should be pretty good stuff, regardless. So I'm not too upset by this. It was kind of a nothing segment. Backstage, we saw Jade getting interviewed, and Mark Sterling showed up and says basically tries to recruit her again. And he tries this by saying he doesn't want Jade to work for him. He wants to work. He wants to work for her. And basically, Jade kind of just says, "Don't ever interrupt me again." She'll think about it, but she's her own woman and whatnot. I really have no idea who Jade is gonna get managed by. I I have no idea. It's not gonna be Vicky. It's not gonna be Matt. I don't think it's going to be Mark Sterling, as much as I would love that because he's a very enjoyable character. I'm genuinely beside myself. I have no idea who they're going to bring in for her. I have no idea who would even make sense to be paired with Jade. Yeah, I'm drawing a blank here. If you have any ideas, feel free to comment down below if you're on YouTube or tweet it at us. But yeah, I have zero inkling. I have no prediction for who could be brought in. The only other manager that hasn't been mentioned is Jake Roberts with Lance Archer, I think. And I as much as I feel like I've joked about it on the podcast in the past, or to Joey and Ryan, no, I don't think Jake Roberts is going to manage Jade. So I have no idea. This could be a surprise. It could just end up being nothing. I have really no idea. There's no expectations for this on me. So I guess we'll find out. Maybe even next week, because we found out that Jade is going to be on Dynamite next week. And we'll talk about that a bit later on. From here, we got our NWA Women's World Championship match, which saw Serena Deeb making her return to AEW Dynamite after a couple months, I feel, from her injury. And she was here to defend the NWA Women's World Championship against Red Velvet. I thought this was a very, very good match. Serena has been kind of tied to very strong women's matches in AEW. I feel like she hasn't had a bad match since signing with them. And this was another one that really, I felt did a very good job at that. Her and Red Velvet had a very fast-paced, very aggressive, very well-worked match, I felt. Serena came back with what seemed like a newfound aggression. It wasn't like she was fully heel or anything, but she's definitely more aggressive than we're used to seeing her presented as in AEW. I think that's a good thing for sure. As much as I love Serena Deeb like regularly, I think her having a new level of aggression in her offense definitely works a lot more in her favor, especially with like her finish, the Serenity Lock. I thought looked really good with what she added to it. Um, which we'll just straight up. She tapped out Red Velvet. She got her in the Serenity Lock once. Red Velvet got out. And then she got her back in, and instead of just like locking it in again, she started slamming what's her face, Red Velvet's like knee against the ground and locked it in tighter for the submission. And even after the match, she had just like an aggressive look on her face. I thought this was a really, really solid match in the middle of the show. Definitely very happy, to see Serena Deeb back. And presumably heading towards a clash with her and Thunder Rosa for the NWA Women's World Championship, which I'm all for, because please, please give us that. That's going to be great. And Red Velvet continues to really shine. Somebody who I had never heard of before AEW, and now she's just like fantastic. So yeah, I love this. Great stuff from both girls. We got a brief promo from Pac backstage with Alex Marvez catching up with him. He said he's sick and tired of being robbed of his opportunities, and now he has his match, and there's nothing Kenny or the Bucks or any of the elitist pricks can do about it. At Double or Nothing, what fool would bet against the bastard? Solid stuff. Anthony Ogogo versus Austin Gunn is up next. Austin Gunn just comes sprinting out here as soon as the match starts. He just goes after Ogogo with a bunch of punches, and he hits a running blockbuster on him. But eventually, Anthony Ogogo comes back here, gets him with the gut punch, which drops Austin, and he starts crawling to the ropes. He gets back up and takes a second one. Somehow he started bleeding and was bleeding from his mouth, and it kind of just like smeared all over Ogogo's face. And then as Austin Gunn was crawling up, he put his hand on Ogogo's chest to leave like a bloody handprint. Great visual. And Anthony Ogogo put him up for a wrist lock, and then launched him into the air, and he beat him with just like a pop up like punch. And it was basically like a pop-up like knockout punch. So I thought this was good. I thought this was another really good outing for Anthony Ogogo. We still haven't seen him have to wrestle like a full match. This is just him killing Austin Gunn. But we did see him take some offense here. We saw him take some offense from Austin Gunn. I thought Austin Gunn did awesome here. I thought his selling was very good. So great job to Austin Gunn for this. He made Anthony Ogogo look like millions of dollars. So that good stuff. We also had Cody out here with Arn Anderson, and Cody was wrapped in an American flag as a follow-up from last week. We went backstage and saw Christopher Daniels and Frankie Kazarian. Marvez asks Daniels about his future, and instead of saying anything, Daniels just shakes Frankie's hand, whispers something in his ear, don't know what it is, and he leaves. Kazarian then goes on to say that he doesn't have the words to say what Chris has meant to him for his whole career, and he doesn't know what path Daniels is going to be on from now, but he knows where he's going. He blames the entire elite, and he's going to hunt them down member by member and teach them what it feels like to have your heart ripped out of your chest. He's a bomb that you can't defuse and you can't unload, and it's a promise, or it's not a promise, it's not a threat, it's the gospel, according to Frankie Kazarian. Awesome promo from Kaz. This was exactly what I feel like everybody would want from him. I'm excited to see where he's going, and I guess we're not getting heel Frankie Kazarian. It looks like we're getting like strong babyface or like anti-hero Kazarian in the mid card, and trying to take out different people within the elite. So cool, really solid promo from him. I'm interested to see where Daniels goes, if they're going to give him like one final singles match or what. But I thought this was really solid stuff from Kaz. This took us into our final segment before the main event, which saw Miro coming out as the new TNT champion to cut a promo. And I just want to say real quick, I thought Miro delivered his promo excellently. This man, I know everybody, including me and Joey, were very, very harsh on the Miro, Kip Sabian, and Best Friends feud, and rightfully so. Miro's performance in that and his whole presentation just did not work. But literally, the rehab this man has gotten in such a quick amount of time, fantastic. His performance against Darby last week in winning the title, great. And he followed that up this week by coming out and starting his promo by saying, I want to thank Jesus Christ for protecting me and giving me strength and power to make me more aggressive than everybody else so I can destroy them. But that's not Darby Allin's talent. And after talking all that crap, he ended up beating him up so bad that he took the title, and everybody doesn't know, or everybody knows it doesn't matter who you are. If you have what Miro wants, you're done. He says, go on, make another one of your gritty student videos, and next week live on Dynamite, somebody's going to get an opportunity for his title, and he's going to destroy them over and over again. We found out that it was Dante Martin getting this title shot later on, but Lance Archer and Jake Roberts come out. Lance tells Miro to shut up, and he says that I've been the beast here in AEW, going back to when Miro was still trying to have a day all about himself. He failed to win the TNT Championship last year in the inaugural championship match against Cody at Double or Nothing, but he's getting it done this time, this year, and they're going to give people a monster fight like they haven't seen since Godzilla vs. Kong. He's going to hold that title over his head and make Miro his Bulgarian bitch. Miro then says that, that really hurt, and I've never heard that before. And he says, that you better pray to God that that old man stays away from me, because there ain't enough yoga in the world to bring him back to save Jake Roberts' life if he ever crosses Miro. And I thought Miro and Archer had a hell of an exchange here. This was very enjoyable. I thought Miro looked great. I do want to say, I'm sure it might be a hot take to some people, because I know that she's it's not like a controversial person in terms of like who she is, but in terms of like her work in wrestling. I really hope that Lana or CJ Perry, whatever you want to call her, eventually makes her way to AEW and gets paired up with Miro. I feel like they could do some great stuff, not being constrained to like the WWE thing where she was like a Russian and then she wasn't, and then she was again and then she wasn't. And Miro's character isn't that he's like this evil foreigner. He's just this crazy like big man who wants to kill everybody. And I feel like her being like the master manipulator behind him, not like manipulating Miro, like manipulating opponents, playing mind games with them, and just like outmaneuvering them. I feel like they could be a really fun duo to have. And I'm going to be honest, I love Naomi. I don't really care about them as a tag team in WWE, so I would love to see Lana or CJ, whatever she would be called, eventually making her way to AEW to get paired up with Rusev. I think that they would just be great, because when you look back at Rusev's first run when he was the Bulgarian Brute with the U.S. title, him and Lana were great together. So I hope that eventually we get that, because I think it'd be great. And that sent us to our main event, the Varsity Blondes versus the Young Bucks for the AEW World Tag Team Championship. This is exactly what I think everybody wanted it to be. Very back and forth, lots and lots of quick, aggressive moves from the younger guys, Pillman and Griff. And the Bucks being the dickhead heels that they are, even going so far to spray Julia Hart in the face with the aerosol can. I thought this was really good. There was a big near fall towards the end with a roll up where it looked like the Blondes might steal the win, but that did not happen. That was really the only moment where it looked like they were going to pull it off. And yeah, they obviously did not win. I don't think many people expected the Varsity Blondes to win here, but really solid match. Another very strong showing from these guys. I'm very excited for their careers. I feel like they're going to definitely be a standout team in AEW moving forward. But they won, tapping out Brian Pillman with the sharpshooter. And after the match, Moxley and Kingston come down. Brandon Cutler and Don Callis just hightail it out of there. Mox and Kingston beat down the Bucks, and then Eddie Kingston steals their shoes. And that was Dynamite. So yeah, I thought it was a pretty solid show. Was it the best show ever? Probably not, but there was also a lot of promo stuff and a lot of like non-wrestling segments on this week that really kind of furthered the stories for Double or Nothing, which I was a big fan of. I thought they all really kind of knocked it out of the park on that end. So yeah, I would give the show a thumbs up. Definitely recommend. Christian and Seidel was great. The main event was great. And Serena Deeb versus Red Velvet was also really fun. So if you're going to check out anything, definitely check those out. And go find the dinner segment with the Pinnacle. That was also really worth watching. Last but not least, there is one thing we need to talk about, and that is what AEW announced. At the end of the show, we got the announcements for the cards for the Go Home show, which is next week again, Friday Night Dynamite at 10 p.m. We have a bunch of stuff announced. We have Miro defending the TNT Championship against Dante Martin of Top Flight, Joey Janela versus Hangman Page in a rematch from All In, which is pretty insane that we're getting that. It's been, I think they said like 3 years. Anthony Ogogo versus, not Anthony Ogogo versus Anthony Ogogo and Cody Rhodes, the weigh-in for their match at Double or Nothing. Jade Cargill is issuing an open challenge. Interested to see who answers that. We're having a celebration of the Inner Circle in honor of them possibly breaking up at Double or Nothing. I don't think that will happen, but adds a bit of finality to that. We're getting the 1-year anniversary celebration for Hikaru Shida, celebrating her 365 days of holding the title. We're getting Evil Uno and Stu Grayson versus Scorpio Sky and Ethan Page, and we are getting Darby Allin versus Cesar Bononi, as well as Orange Cassidy responding to Kenny Omega's offer to defer his title shot to a singles match down the line. And then we officially have the entire card for AEW Double or Nothing. Let me get this up real quick. All right, so everything that we have for this show: Hangman Page versus Brian Cage. We have Anthony Ogogo versus Cody Rhodes. Scorpio Sky and Ethan Page versus Sting and Darby Allin in a regular tag match. Miro versus Lance Archer for the TNT Championship. We have the Casino Battle Royal with, I believe, 20 people announced. Besides we don't have the Joker or the wild card. We have Stu. I want to say that's Stu Grayson. Or is that the Blade? I really can't tell who that is on this this picture, to be honest. I just see a bald man here. So Stu Grayson or the Blade. It's one of them. Evil Uno, Powerhouse Hobbs, Griff Garrison, Max Caster, Mark Quinn, Penta El Zero M, QT Marshall, Matt Hardy, Brian Pillman Jr., Dustin Rhodes, 10, Christian Cage, Lee Johnson, Nick Camarado, Matt Sydal, Isaiah Cassidy, Anthony Bowens, Colt Cabana, and Jungle Boy. We also have the announcement that this match will have a special commentator in the form of Paul White. So him being there officially, could be an indication that he could be the mystery person in this, but don't hold your breath on that one. Hikaru Shida defends her AEW Women's World Championship against Britt Baker. The Inner Circle versus the Pinnacle in Stadium Stampede 2. The Young Bucks defending the AEW World Championship against Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston. And Pac versus Orange Cassidy versus Kenny Omega for the AEW World Championship. Whew. So that is the card for AEW Double or Nothing. If you ask me, it's a pretty goddamn stacked card. Very excited for that. And as I mentioned, I don't know what our plan is for next week if we're doing a Dynamite review on Friday, since that show is so late. But we will have a prediction show next week for AEW Double or Nothing, and we will have Ryan and Angel's Impact Power Hour will also be next week. So be sure to tune in next week. Subscribe to the podcast if you're not already. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out the podcast over there. And that's going to do it for me. So thank you for joining me for this solo edition of the AEW Dynamite review. Talk to you next time. Have a good rest of your week. And be sure to get vaccinated if you're not already vaccinated.